Lasco Hurley. The Minister will be aware that the former Waterford Crystal workers did take a court case to the Commercial Court, and that the Commercial Court sought advice from the European Court of Justice in relation to a number of aspects in respect of the government's obligations and the state's obligations to the European Union 2008 Insolvency Directive. And the European Court of Judgment did make a ruling last week and found that the state had failed in its obligations to implement measures that protect and safeguard workers' pensions in respect of a double insolvency, and that the state had not implemented Article 8 of the EU directive that I've mentioned. Today I hosted a briefing, Minister, in the AV room that was attended by Oireachtas members from across all parties and none. And the briefing was given by Jimmy Kelly and Walter Cullinane, who are two officials with Unite, Tom Hogan and Michael Dooley, who are two former Crystal workers and who are two plaintiffs to the court case which I've referred, Mona Costello, who is the lawyer for the workers themselves, and John O'Connell, who is a pensions expert. And the two former workers who spoke talked about their experience of being in work for a long number of years. They worked between them 30 and 40 years in Waterford Crystal. They then found out at very short notice that their jobs were gone, that they were essentially being locked out of their jobs, the doors were closing, and they were being left without proper redundancy payments and without proper terms and conditions being implemented. So they were treated very badly by the company. They then found out that not only was the company insolvent, but their pensions fund was insolvent as well, and that after a long number of years and long service to a company, they were to get not their proper entitlements in terms of redundancy, but were also not going to get the vast majority of their pension which they themselves paid into. And to add insult to injury, they then found out at their cost that the state had failed in its obligation, that if the state had implemented the European Union Directive of 2008, the Insolvency Directive, that those workers' pensions could and should have been protected. So I first of all want to commend those workers for taking the court case. I want to congratulate them on their victory, but I do want to appeal to the government to act. And I do understand that this has to go back to the Commercial Court. But the very strong message that came from all of the people who were present in the AV room today and who made that presentation, from the legal people to the pensions expert to the workers themselves and to the union, is that the government should not drag its heels. And while the chair can argue that it is sub judice, it is, of course, but that doesn't stop the government from acting. The point that I'm making is that the government has it within its power and can very easily enter into immediate negotiations with the trade union to properly compensate the former Waterford Crystal workers. Whatever the Commercial Court does, the Commercial Court will do, and I will leave that to the court. What I'm asking the government to do is to start negotiations with the former workers themselves. And the delegation were very clear that if the government do that, then agreement can be reached to everybody's satisfaction. But there absolutely has to be justice for former Waterford Crystal workers. They should get their pensions. They must get their pensions. So the question I have for the Minister is, what steps will the government take following this judgment? Are they going to drag their heels, delay and drag this out further and add insult to injury? Or will they accept the court's ruling, allow the Commercial Court to run its course, but to enter into negotiations with the trade union, properly compensate the workers, and then seek to put in place legislation, which is what they will ultimately be compelled to do, to ensure that all workers and their pensions are protected?
Thomas G. Montana.
Thank you very much. I'm taking this debate on behalf of the Minister for Social Protection. On the 25th of April last, the European Court of Justice issued a ruling which contained a number of clarifications regarding the transposition of EU Directive 2008 2012-94-EC, which concerns the protection of employees in the event of the insolvency of their employer. This ruling was in response to a July 2011 referral from the High Court regarding proceedings brought by former workers at Waterford Crystal. The High Court had, in taking the interpretation of the provision of the Directive 2008/94 was necessary in order for it to give its decision in this case, decided to stay the proceedings and to refer a number of questions to the Court of Justice for preliminary ruling. Following the ECJ ruling, the matter would now revert to the High Court for consideration, and given this matter remains before the courts, it would not be appropriate that I comment further on any specific aspects of the case at this time.
Just a very quick supplementary to it. Can I just say that I understand the brevity of the response that I got back from the Minister and the fact that the Minister may be reluctant to discuss this further. I must stress the point that there is nothing stopping the state doing something on its own volition. So there is nothing stopping the Minister for Finance, for example, starting discussions with the United Trade Union and those former workers. So I'm directly appealing to you, Minister, for you to use your good offices to appeal to him to start those discussions and negotiations. There was cross-party support at the briefing today for that to happen. That should happen because those workers deserve justice. And if it is seen by people in Waterford and by those workers that the government are going to continue to hide behind the court and continue to hide behind legal issues and drag their feet on this issue, it will be resisted by people very, very fiercely, because the vast majority of people in Waterford feel very deeply for those former Waterford Crystal workers. And for anybody who believes in justice, I think that you have to do the right thing by those workers. I would appeal to you, Minister, to ask the Minister for Finance, through my offices, to arrange such a meeting between that delegation and the Minister, and let's start those discussions, which inevitably will happen anyway.
I'm sure Minister Perry will convey your very remarks to the...
Yeah, but I would like to emphasise the last sentence again. Following the ECJ ruling, the matter will now revert to the High Court for consideration. Very important. And given this matter remains before the courts, it would not be appropriate that I comment further on the specific aspects of the case at this time. But that is the fact of the fact that it is before the courts. I can't comment further on it.
Thank you, Minister.